talk flex boxes real fast, and then we'll talk zips at the end of it. So your goal for today is to refine your wikis, keep adding that content you've been researching, keep adding some of the style things I'm going to show you today, and then when you're ready to submit, I'll show you how to zip your completed web pages to turn them in. Okay, so I'm going to start with flex boxes and children, and then as I find additional resources, I'll get them out to y'all. Keep working on completing project number 2, applying different layouts, and then as resources happen, I'll put them right here on Tuesday the 17th. Okay, so the quick gist before I show you all the technical steps is flex boxes are a way for your layout, the way that your page is put together, to start responding a little bit more easily, because there are more complicated ways to make your page responsive, but we're not quite ready for that level of responsivity. Okay, hi, thank you. I'll check if they're here. I'm going to open VS Code. Thank you. Yes, they're here. And I'm going to start, this is just my index page from, I don't remember which demo this was, but this was last week. It currently does not have a flex box on it. All it really has is a set of navigations with some anchors, okay? So, give me just a second. Drop this note off. Okay. So, the gist with a flex box is it's going to automatically allow your computer to start doing some math and doing some like subdividing dependent on how many children there are for a parent. And our parent is going to be the thing that has the flex rule assigned to it. And it's going to allow our output or our export of the code that we write to be a little bit more responsive. So how do you do that? At its most basic level, you need a container. Okay, so you can use a div. You can use any of the semantic elements from a few weeks ago. You can use anything that is a block level container element. So that includes things like tables or lists, ordered or unordered lists. Those are all things that are able to be flexed because they are a container with children. That's the first step, okay? So I'm going to keep it really simple, show you a little quick hack as well. Let me make my, hold on. There's a way for me to make my text bigger so you can see it a little bit better. Hold on. Okay, I'll figure it out later. This immediately scared me. So a trick that you can do is once you get familiar with tags that you're using all the time, if you want to quickly make those sandwiches, you can just type out the internal part of the tag, like just the letters div, and then hit enter. And it's automatically going to convert it to a start and stop tag, so you can do that for a little bit more efficiency. If it doesn't work, you know how to build the actual shift comma, shift period, but if you want to save a little bit of time, you can usually just type out the letter and then hit enter. Anyways, we have a div container here that we can put some children inside of that is going to become our flex box, okay? So I'm going to add, just for example's sake, I'm going to add some block level elements like paragraphs, headings, and then other container divs inside of this main parent div. So I have some pieces that I can move around, okay? So I'm going to type P and then just hit enter. So it's automatically going to give me the paragraph slices of bread. I just need to add some paragraph ingredients in the middle here, which we call, the technical term is content. And then we add, let's do a heading, H1, just call this H1. And we'll do that 2 more times. H2, enter. H2 again for the content part. And then H3, enter. H3 for the content part. H1 is the biggest, H6 is the smallest, so it's a little bit flipped from usual. So what we've done right here, very basically, is we've got a container. Your container might have headings and then paragraphs underneath if you're describing something specific about your wiki. Your container might have a bunch of images inside of it. Your container might have other links. Your container might have a lot of different things that would be needed on a page like a Wikipedia, right? Once I run this, you're going to notice that it is just behaving exactly like it would without the div present. You can't quite see the div because it's a little bit invisible since the content of the div is more elements like this, okay? So I'm going to add a quick border the old-fashioned way as an attribute to my div so you can see the container. We're going to call this border This is the old-fashioned way, so you don't want to do it like this way every time. 1 pixel solid black, and then a semicolon, so that we can see those pieces live inside of this div right here. Okay? How we can start making this into a flexbox is we need a style container inside of our website's brain. Okay? And the website's brain is in the head. So you have head and body. Remember I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. The part of the outside world that you can see on others is the body, right? Different accessories, different outfits, different types of elements that you put inside of the body container are visible to the world. What you put inside of the head container is invisible. It's usually functional. It's, it's memories, it's tools, it's experiences, it's whatever. Those are not as visible as the body is. So we need those two containers before we do anything else. And I'm going to delete this style for the moment, so that we don't have we can bring it back in later. Just like with a creature, I'm going to put the head at the top of the document, right underneath the HTML right here. Just type out HEAD, head, then hit enter again. And inside of this head, we're going to put a style container, okay? STYLE, enter, enter. By adding this hub, by adding this landing zone for all of our different style rules, like what Flexbox will be using, or how Flexbox happens, we can keep it all in one spot, making it a little bit easier to troubleshoot instead of having all these different style attributes across all of our divs, okay? Before I get to the actual Flexbox part, I want to remind you of a couple different CSS vocab words, okay? CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets because they waterfall over the entire document, and they have 3 major parts, okay? The first part is called the selector. That is going to be the thing that you are actually changing, okay? And we'll get to class rules back here in just a second. A couple different selectors that you can see on this screen are the anchor tag, the H1 tag, the div tag, the paragraph tag, the H2 tag. It's the thing you're trying to change, okay? So, after selectors, once you've chosen what your selector is, you add a curly bracket like this, okay? And inside of the curly brackets lives 2 more vocab words. Those 2 vocab words are property and value. So let me spell it out here. My code is going to be mad because these are not like actual pieces of, not style, value. Because these are not actual pieces of CSS, okay? So first you got to tell the CSS what to look at. We'll get to that in a second. Then you got to change a property like color, background color, font size, align items, and then you got to change the property to something specific, okay? As a reminder, the selector is what you are changing. The property is the specific thing that you are changing about the selector, and the value is the specific thing you're changing the property to, okay? So let's retrofit this. Let's change up some of these vocab words here to fit into my example a little bit better here. I'm going to use the anchor tag as a selector by just typing the letter A, okay? And anything that I tell inside of these curly brackets will be applied to all anchors because I haven't given it a specific class or ID, which we'll get to in a second. If I want to change the color of my anchor tags, of my links, that's going to be the property. So I'm going to set this to color, and then the value is the specific color I want my anchors to have. For this case, I'll do red. Red. Okay, so it pops out a little easier against the white background. We have a selector, we have a property, and we have a value. Now the cool part about these curly brackets is any type of styling or anything that you want to change beyond just the color, you can keep adding so long as you separate them by the colon and the semicolon. So if I wanted to make their text size by typing out text, maybe it's not text size, it's font size, my bad. Font dash size. If I click on that, it's going to give me a couple options here. Let's make it extra large. And then let's also change let's add a border around our anchors by typing out border and then doing the same type of styling that we did for the div just a second ago. So we'll go 1 pixel for size, solid for style, and the complementary color to red is green. So let's do a green color around the outside. What I've done here is chosen one selector, the anchor tag, added a couple different properties like color, font size, and border Properties are separated by the two dots. You can kind of think of them as eyes because that's the thing you're looking at, right? And then the values are the things that you're specifically changing, okay? So if I look at my output as I left it, it's the same. However, once I refresh here, it's going to turn my anchors into the style rule that I gave it. It added a border around the outside, it changed the color, and it changed the font size. That set of steps is important because that's how you determine things are flexboxes. And I'll show you what the flexboxes look like once I add that feature to the div container. Okay? You with me so far? Making sense? Okay. It's the same set of steps, but we need to add something specific called a class rule. Remember, these are the ones that let's all imagine that we're inside of an HTML document here. We're all different elements. If I set a class rule, it's going to affect each and every one of you because you're contained within that class. Okay? The other more specific type is an ID rule. If I set a rule that only affects your student ID number, it's only going to work on you. Okay? Does that make sense? So, we can go outside of our anchor or our A tag curly bracket here, and we want to add a class name, and I want you to remember all classes have periods. Okay? So you start your selector with the period. I like my class names to have relationship to their function. You can name them whatever you want. Keep in mind that when you work with other developers, you want them to know what the class name does, but you can honestly make it whatever you want as long as you call it back correctly. So we're going to call this flex container. And I'm going to do something interesting and not include a space. Because if I add a space, sometimes my HTML is going to freak out a little bit. I'm going to separate my words with a capital letter. So we have a period for class rule. We have a name that relates to its function, flex container. And then we need some curly brackets so that we can actually write some property and value CSS rules. Okay? Before I start writing rules for this flex container, I need to tell the computer where that flex container lives. And we do that with the attribute of class. Remember, attributes always go inside of the start tags, like href, src, alt, width. Those are all things that go inside of the start tag. If I want to set a specific div or any specific container to have the rule of flex, I need to give it that class name. So I'm going to go inside of my div right here on line number 19, and I'm going to add the word class, hit the enter key so that I get my equals quotes, and then I need my class name to exactly match the selector in CSS. We're just going to remove the period for the HTML part. Okay? So we're going to call this flex container. And you can see as I type it out, it's going to make a guess or a suggestion that that's what I want to contain, right? I'm going to click on that. I'm going to make sure that this matches this. You can see when I highlight it, it also kind of highlights, like if you put your eyes like right around here, when I highlight the specific class name, it's also going to highlight the CSS rule associated with it, okay? The last thing you need to make a container into a flex box, you've set the CSS rule, you've given the container a class name that relates to its rule, you need the property of display, and you need the value of flex. Okay, just like this, separated by our colon, our eyes, because that's what we're looking at, and our semicolon, because that's just how it ends. Okay, so before I click refresh, let me go back to my output here. Everything contained inside of the paragraph ingredients / content, these 4 elements right here, these 4 children, once I refresh, will be set to flex. Okay? Now, if we go back to the output, because I've refreshed here, it's basically going to make them perform at default like an inline element. Okay? So these are all still block level elements, but because they are children of this flex container, which I can go up and add a quick border to. So if we go border, let's go 2 pixel dotted red this time. So it's distinct from the other one. Okay? There's our flex container, only taking up the amount of space that it needs, and everything is stacked on top of each other. This is where you can start looking back at Flexbox Froggy to see those properties and values and how they affected the container within. Yeah, Gaffney, you have a question.
In our project, do we have to have everything in the Flexbox, or do we have some stuff in the Flexbox and some stuff?
You can have some stuff in and some stuff out. Let me pull up the assignment real quick so you can see. I do need to get that rubric done too. I apologize. But all of y'all are generally on track for what I'm asking for this project. So let's look at project 2 here. You just need at least one flex box with at least 3 flex children. So if yours looks exactly like my example, and I'll put this code up at the end so you can experiment with it too, you'll have what you need to get those points on the rubric. All right? But what I want to show you is the more flex-based properties and values you add to your class rule, right? Each one of these elements is a student inside of a classroom. They're all affected by the class rule, no matter their differences, right? You can add a couple. Let me look up some Flexbox. I'm just going to Google Flexbox and see what pops up. There's the CSS tricks link right here, which will give you a bunch of different parts. We want to look at Flexbox properties, for example. Okay? We can change the flex direction. We can change whether or not the flex wraps or doesn't wrap. I think I'm going to do some justify content, and I'm going to do some space around. So let's do some aligning and some spacing. These are the most common things that I use with a Flexbox, which is why they were a main part of Flexbox Froggy. Okay? So we're back inside of our flex container rule here. We're going to set the flex, or let's do space. I can't remember what it's called, actually. Hold on. Give me a sec. See, even I forget sometimes. Space around Flexbox. It's justify content, I believe. So let's see. Yes. Okay, cool. I need to play some Flexbox Froggy again. So we're going to justify content. And by typing that out, we get a little head start. It's going to give us a bunch of different options here. If I go space around, it's going to add an even amount of space around each of my children. Okay? So these are let me label these real quick, and I'll remind you the comment shortcut. So this is child number 1. And if I hold control and press slash, oops, that does the whole line. Shoot. Highlight child number 1, control slash. Nope, it's not working. Okay, never mind. Forget I did that. We can do child, just so you have a label here. Needs to be on its own line for the control slash to work. So there's child 1, child 2, that says SILD, but you get me. Child 3, control slash, and then finally child number 4. We have quadruplets. Okay? Control slash. All right, so these are going to be comments, so they're not going to load in the document flow, but if you want to leave yourself little notes or little annotations, this is the way you can do that. By setting my justify content to space around, and then making sure I hit Control S and refreshing, it's going to take all of the children of my Flexbox here and give them even space around each other, okay? When you set, like when you're typing in Google Docs or when you're typing in a Word doc or a PowerPoint or whatever, when you change where the font starts, you're changing the justification, right? Because it tells you where it starts or stops. In this case, we have something here called a viewport, which is another name for a browser window. And when I resize my viewport, you see when I make it a little bit smaller here, it's going to try and maintain that each flex child, oops, let me minimize this, that each flex child has enough space around it. You see how it kind of flexes as my viewport grows or shrinks? That's going to be an easy way for your site pieces to start staying together. And generally, we can assume that this is about the width of a cell phone. So if you're looking at this website on your phone in portrait orientation, straight up and down, all of the pieces still have a little bit of breathing room, okay? Am I making sense so far? And I'm going to put this code in the resources so that you have a chance to kind of play around with it a little bit. Another thing I want to show you is what happens if you have too many children so that it doesn't behave nicely like my example here. All right, I'm going to copy this and just paste it a couple more times. And just update this to be child 5, child 6, you never guess what's coming next, child 7, and then child 8. Okay, Control S to save, green circle to refresh. Now we've got still a little bit of decent space around on a big viewport, on a computer or on a tablet or on a TV, but if we start getting down into phone size, it gets a little crowded, right? We're getting a little too close within on each other. And if you're having tech issues with your screen, I'm almost done. Give me just a second. You can also set your flex to wrap or to not wrap. By default, it does not wrap. So if we go here, wrap like a present with a W. We want to set our flex dash wrap to have the quality of wrap. Okay? It's a little bit repetitive because we want to introduce something called a breakpoint so that our content stays nice and organized. And you can see the cool part about a flexbox is it flexes, right? It's a little bit more intuitive. As I resize my viewport, we're still spacing around, but if my viewport gets too small, look at this second set of children right over here. If my viewport starts getting too small, they're gonna start to wrap around and go on their own line, okay? So when it can't give enough space around, it should start to break. Why is it not breaking? There it goes, right about here, okay? And it's gonna continue to space the pieces around so that my order stays the same, okay? I'm throwing a lot of vocab words at you today, so don't freak out. The last vocab word I want to show off here, because this I think is a good amount of flex experimentation for your specific page because it keeps things in a nice order. It doesn't need a ton of extra coding in order for it to intelligently grow or shrink. But there are other flex properties and values that you can try out in your work time. Okay. The last vocab word that I want to throw at you here before I upload this video to Canvas is called stack order. Does anybody remember stack order from last week? It's okay if you don't. I'm just getting a feel. Okay. Stack order means that the first line gets rendered. Rendered is another word for shown. Like if you've taken animation or TV Pro or video productions or film, you render out your video so that it can be shown at the end, right? Things get rendered in the stack order from 1 to however many lines you've got. So that means my first line loads before my second line, before my third, blah, 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 all the way down to my 40th line, okay? What you need to know about that, why that matters, is because what you put first in the stack order renders before the other things. That's why the head container, the brain part of our website that makes it behave a little bit differently than a default, goes at the start. Okay? Is this making sense still? Perfect. Okay. This is what I want you to have. This is what I want you to mess around with flex containers and with the style container and containers in general. You can also, the last thing I'll show you real quick, you don't have to do this, stack containers on top of containers. So if I put another div in here, and we'll call this, I'll add a little comment right here that says container within a container. If anybody wants to play the Inception sound, you can do that real quick. So there's container within a container, and we'll call this just some paragraph real quick. Paragraph, let's say container paragraph, just container para. And then we can do that one more time. Enter. We'll do another div. Let's actually put that one inside of the other one. A lot of web design is going to be divs on divs on divs, okay? So we're going to go as a child of the container within the container. We're going to do another div, and then we're going to go container within container within another container. So we're going crazy here. I gotta sneeze. Excuse me. My bad. Okay, within another container. All right, and let's comment that out with Control/, and then let's add one more paragraph so that I can show you that all of these pieces stack on top of each other. Container, container, para. Okay? Control-S. Now if we go back to refresh, you're going to see that we got a little bit of, I don't know why the microphone is so whiny. That's not supposed to be. Because we have the flex rule, and because these containers are inside of other containers, they're still going to interact with the other children that are ruled by the class, or set by the class rule. This is where, the last thing I'll show you, is where you can start introducing ID-based rules. If I set a rule for your specific student ID, it only affects you. It's the same type of vibe as periods for classes, except you use hashtags like you have student ID numbers. So if I set this ID to be, let's go con1, and then we set this ID to be ID equals con2, I have two more rules that I can, or two more specific things that I can add with the hashtag con1, curly bracket, and then let's do Did I do cont or con? I did con. Okay. And then let's do that same thing. We've already got this written. Control C, Control V, update that to be the number 2. And then we'll tab this over so it looks a bit nicer. Okay, I'm doing this because I want to show you. Let's just add a border to each of these. Let's go 1 pixel, solid purple. Purple's my favorite color. And then we'll do the same border, but we'll do green. Control C, Control V. Oh, it did it twice. And then we'll change it to green. And then we'll make sure we have our curly bracket right here. Okay, so I'm showing you this and I'm going fast on purpose because we'll get to IDs a little bit later. You can see that those containers are contained within our parent, right? They are children of the main holder and they will move as necessary, all right? So you don't have to do all that ID stuff. I just wanted to show you it's possible if you wanted to start experimenting with divs inside of divs. So I'm going to give you this code in the resources section. I will put the HTML on one side and the style on another so that you have them in the right boxes. And I want you guys to try getting your Flexbox to just have the role of Flex and have some children within it. And then maybe add a little bit of justify content space around so they're not so close to one another. Okay? Does that make sense? Maybe I should have skipped the little end part. That was a little bit too much, but anyways. I'm going to quickly show you how to zip your folders when you're ready to submit them. And then that will be the last thing I show you before you can work or have questions for me or Jake. So from your file explorer, ours are, this is pictures from the assembly today. Ours are saved in our OneDrive and they have the naming scheme that make them easy to find. So we're working in project number 2 here, if I'm not mistaken, we are. Okay, so I find project 2 right here. And before I zip it up, I have to make sure it's all saved by clicking save right here, file save, and close it so that I can zip it. Because it'll get mad if it's currently open when you try to zip it. To zip your folder, you click on it with your, left click, and then right click with your middle finger. And we want to either compress to a zip file like this, or you want to send to a compressed comma zip, or a compressed parentheses zipped folder. That's something that Jake and I can help you with if you're at that point. But compressing your folder into an archive is how you can submit it to Canvas if you're ready for that. I'll show you again on Thursday, but I wanted to get you started now. Okay, now I'm done for real. I'm gonna have you guys just continue working on project 2. If you still have questions, please ask. Remember, there's no such thing as a stupid question. If you're ready to submit, you can zip it. If you're not quite ready, just keep working. And this is due on Thursday. Okay? Thank y'all for listening. I'll get this video uploaded and this code copied as soon as I can, and then Jake and I can help you. All right, good job.